Alright, so good day everyone. We are now down to the last topic of this module, which is evolution. So in this topic, we will going to discuss how evolution, how what makes evolution possible. So technically, we will discuss the mechanism of evolutionary changes. So on the first discussion that we had, we found out that the earth itself has something to do with the evolution of an organism, and followed by that video. So on the next video, the evidences of evolution. So in that video, we try to we locate some possible structural and molecular evidences found in some organisms that will be related to evolution, and that will support the idea of what they called evolution. So in this case, since we have the evidence, and since we have the the effect, or how does the earth affect the evolutionary changes in an organism. So for today, we will discuss how those changes happen. All right, how those changes happen. So mechanism of evolutionary changes. So if we define mechanism is a method or means of doing something. Alright, so it is a method of or means of doing something. So in this case, we will try to find out how or what is the method of evolution. How do organism evolve? Alright, so what makes an organism, or what makes an organism evolve? Yan. So that is the method of evolution we will going to discuss today. Alright, so let's proceed. Alright, so I have pictures here, and I want you to try to find out, or try to identify, or try to find out where the organism. There are organisms in the picture, but they are hidden. So you try to locate them using the pictures that I will show you. So, all right. So what organism do you see? All right. So you're right. So that is a frog. So how many frogs do you see? All right. So you're right. So that is 3. Okay, so there are 3 frogs, so we have it right here. So 1, 2, 3. So these are the frogs. Okay, so next. Alright, so locate the organism here. Alright, so do you know what organism is this? Okay, so the organism is located here. This is some sort of a walking stick. Alright, so it is a walking stick. So at first, if you look at this picture at first, you will not be able to see the organism immediately, because the organism is completely somehow look alike the twig that is on the background. Alright, next one. Alright, so we have right here. So did you find it? Did you find the organism? So, did you find the organism? So, if you find the organism, so this is the organism. So, what organism is this? Okay, you're right. So, that is a grasshopper. Alright, so next one. Alright, so in this picture, can you find the organism? Okay. So, if you found already the organism, what organism do you think it is? Alright, so in this picture, so you're right. So the organism is an insect. Alright, so it is an insect. So it looks like the tree bark that is on the background. Alright, so next one. Alright, so how about this one? Okay, so the organism is located here. So as you can see, it looks like a snake. So if you think it is a snake, no, it is not a snake. So this is the abdomen of some sort of insect. All right, that look like a snake. All right, next one. All right, how about this one? All right, so if you found it, so you're good. So this is an insect. All right, so that looks like a background. That looks like its background, which is a tree bark. Right. Next one. Alright, so those are some example of animals that can do camouflage and mimicry. Alright, so there's a difference between the two. So when camouflage, or when we define camouflage, it looks the same as the color of the environment. Alright, so the color of a tree bark, so on and so forth. So it resembles as the same color, camouflage. But in mimicry, animals do mimicry in order to escape their predator. So sometimes they mimic larger animals. So they mimic larger animals so that they look like a larger animal. So the predator will be ward off in their looks. So that's how mimicry works. Alright, so as we continue, alright, so we have right here the four mechanisms of evolution. So as you encounter with Charles Darwin, so Charles Darwin identified the idea of species changes over time. So species change over time. So he called it evolution. Now, he did not supported it with some processes, but as time passes by, alright, so as time passes by, that particular theory of evolution by Charles Darwin is one by one, bit by pieces, it is somehow connected by modern day science. So because of modern day science, we be able to identify the following mechanism of how evolution works. Alright, so mechanism of evolution: alleles in a frequency in a population may change due to four fundamental forces of evolution. So what is this allele? These are the characteristics or form of your genes. Alright, so alleles are form of genes. Alright, so for example, I have here the gene tall. Alright, so this is a gene. Now, what is the allele? Alright, so what are the alleles for the gene, for the height? So we have here tall and short. So that's the reason why we have dominant and recessive. Alright, so in this case, the tall is the dominant, so the one that will appear on the organism's phenotype is tall somehow. Alright, so this is your alleles. Alright, so yeah. So how do alleles changes over time, and what are the forces affects those changes? Alright, so we'll start first with the first one, which is called the natural selection. So natural selection, evolution acts through natural selection, whereby reproductive and genetic qualities that prove advantageous to survival prevail into future generation. So this is what Charles Darwin is trying to say about survival of the fittest. Right, so we called it the survival of the fittest. So in this case, nature will provide the obstacle. So nature will provide the obstacle in terms of changes in temperature, changes in landscape. Alright, so sunlight, amount of sunlight, yan. So amount of food present in a particular ecosystem. So all those obstacles are given by nature, and the organisms, they don't have any way of avoiding it. So they will just they will try to adapt those kinds of obstacles. So failure to adapt to those kind of obstacle given by nature will mean death. Alright, so those organisms who be able to adapt to those changes in the environment, they will be able to survive, and then when they survive, they will pass that advantageous trait to their future generation. Alright, so that's how important this is. So nature selects who will survive and who will not survive. And the one way of surviving that particular environment is for the organism to adapt. Alright, so when the organism adapt, the organism evolve. Alright, so next one. Alright, so in this case, natural selection happened when Darwin observed the Galapagos finches. So he have an idea that those finches come from one ancestor, and then when the environment changes, so those ancestral finch began to switch their food habits began to switch their food eating habits, so that they will be able to survive. Some of them eats cactus seed, some of them may eats seeds of some tree plants, yan, and some of them eats fruits, some of them eats insects. So with this kind of adaptation, the chances of survival of an organism will be greater. So therefore, if the organism survive, they will be able to pass this kind of traits to their future offsprings. Alright, so that's how natural selection works. Next one. So in this case, we have natural selection in what they call the pepper moths. Alright, so the story behind this one. Alright, so long time ago in London, the color of tree trunks is something like this. Alright, so when the Industrial Revolution came, you know that they are burning coal. So the smoke or the soot, alright, the soot that comes out of the chimneys cover the tree trunks, which is colored like this. This is a light colored, light white or white colored, yan, tree trunk. Then after that, so all tree trunks becomes dark, something like this. Alright, so the thing here is the dark moths are the one who are adapted to that kind of changes in the environment. So what happened is they become camouflaged with that kind of color of your tree trunk. Then the one that is mostly eaten by some insect or by some birds is this light colored moth. Alright, so technically the light colored moth population decline. Then when the tree trunks go back again to this color, the dark ones are likely to be eaten by birds. So there is a slight decline in the population of dark moths in that particular situation. So in this case, you'll be able to see how natural selection works. Alright, next one. Alright, so in order to make your natural selection possible, you need the organism to be adapted to that environment. So this is the process you need in order for the natural selection to happen. So yeah, population becomes better suited to its habitat. So that is adaptation. So it refers to a feature which is especially important for an organism's survival. So not only adapted, so some structure of that organism will be best suited to adapt to that particular environment. Then therefore, the structure of that organism, yeah, their body structure will likely to evolve into something which is useful to that particular changes in the environment. So when the organism adapt, then therefore it will survive. Then when the organism survive, that particular traits that are present to that organism will be carried by the offspring in their future generations. Alright, so that's adaptation. Next one. So there are different types of adaptation. So we have here changes in habitat. So obviously, when an organism cannot adapt to certain changes in their environment, they will likely to go to places where they can survive. All right, so they are suited. Okay, so this is true to humans. All right, so because humans came from Africa. So the food becomes scarce in Africa. They walked and they migrated towards Europe. Alright, some of them stayed in Europe, some of them stayed in Central Asia, some of them stayed in Southeast Asia, some of them started to walk towards North America, and so on and so forth. So with that particular movement, organism changes their habitat and becomes suited to the new environment that they are located. So, alright, so in some cases, organism cannot adapt to a new environment, therefore they become extinct. Alright, so sometimes if they adapt on that particular environment, their genetic sequence, their DNA sequence changes, and then those changes will be carried by the offspring to their future generation. So that's one, habitat changes. Next one, dinosaur. Alright, so when the climate changed during that time, so dinosaurs are not suited to that kind of, or they did not adapt to that drastic changes in the environment. That so some of them or most of them died. Alright, so as you can see, no dinosaurs are left here on Earth except for the crocodile and the snake. Alright, so alright, those are the living dinosaurs that we have right now. So, next one. Alright, next one are the polar bears. Alright, so according to some scientists, after 100 years from now, these polar bears will become extinct due to accelerating effects of climate change. So, if there's no sea ice, no polar bears will likely to survive on that kind of situation. So, they will likely to extinct 100 years from now. Alright, so next. Alright, second type of adaptation is intimate relationship. So in this case, we have here what they call co-adaptation. So what is co-adaptation? When one, alright, so meaning to say that one organism, they are mutual, or they are somehow attached to each other. When this one survive, this one also will survive. Alright, so that is co-adaptation. So if this one die, this one also die. Alright, so we have here mimicry, we have here parasitism. So example of parasitism, we have the parasitic worms, the tapeworm found in our intestine. So when the organism or when their host die, they will die as well. Alright, so predator and prey. Alright, so lion and deer. So when the deer dies, lion also will be affected. So another one, pollination. Alright, so pollination syndrome. If flowers tend to disappear, also with the bees who pollinates them. Alright, so if bees are missing, vice versa, flowers will not produce their fruit, and therefore they will not be able to propagate, so they will die as well. So pollination syndrome. So mutualism, you know this one already. So if the two organisms benefits each other, but they don't harm each other as well, or one of them don't harm each one organism. Yeah. So symbiosis. Yeah. So two organisms that are likely to interact with each other. Alright, so this is what they call co-adaptation. Remember, in co-adaptation, if one organism survive, the other one will survive as well. Alright, next one. Example is this praying mantis over here. So the ability to do camouflage is its adaptation to its environment. So changing the environment will meant to kill off this organism. So as you can see, it follows the color of the environment in which this organism lives. So changing the environment will affect this organism. Alright, next one. Sunflower. Alright, so sunflower. So it is very important. It is very important to have pollinators, because if there's no pollinators, there will be no flowers and fruits that will be propagated. So that's how co-adaptation works. Next one, the Rafflesia. Alright, so Rafflesia has a very strong smell, strong odor for a reason. Alright, so even though it cannot be pollinated by bees, but they have one pollinator, the flies. Alright, so the flies are attracted to that smell, and therefore they be able to propagate their seeds, or they be able to propagate their pollen in order to reproduce. Alright, so next one. The third type of adaptation is what they call the internal adaptation. So this is a type of adaptation in which the body structure tend to evolve to a certain function which is useful to the organism. So one function of it is the brain. Alright, so the brain has a long way. It took about around million years in order to develop, just like what we have right now. So that is an adaptation. That is a form of survival. Alright, so technically our brain evolved. Yeah. So in order for us to survive. So the way we do things right now, it's because of adaptation. Alright? Next one is the temperature regulation. The reason why our skin is very sensitive to temperature regulation with the help of the brain, so that we will be able to change our body to create a proper response to changes in the temperature, like shivering or sweating, something like that. Next one is the effectivity of the immune system. So notice how our white blood cells fights off infections and other foreign stuffs in our body, which is not which is harmful. So the effectiveness of the immune system is one of the evolutionary features that happen in our body. So not only that immune system, the digestive system, and also the other organ systems. Alright, so that is internal adaptation. Alright, so we have here the brain. So I've discussed this one to you on the nervous system. Next one, we have the eye. Alright, so our eye have had a long way to become perfected like this one that we have right here. Alright, so some animals tend to see light only. Some animals tend to see some poor images, but only our eyes have the high capacity or high performance or high capacity to see full images and their definite in their definite color. Alright, so that's how powerful our eye is compared to the eye of other organisms. Alright, so that is internal adaptation. Next one. Alright, so the fourth type of adaptation is the compromise and conflict between adaptation. Alright, so we have the camouflage and then sexual selection. Alright, so in this case, we'll give you one example. So in camouflage, so this is the organism. If you pause this video before before I answer this where's the organism here in the picture. So this is a catitid. Alright, so this is an insect. So now what happened here? What will happen here if the color of the environment changes? So what will happen to this insect? So they will likely to die. Alright, so just like the praying mantis earlier, so when the environment is compromised, then therefore their survival also will be affected, something like that. Alright, next one. So the peacock. Alright, so did you know that the peacock are favorite food of tigers? Alright, so how can you fly away from your predators if you have this kind of feathers? Alright, so if you have a beautiful feather, so how can you go or escape from your predator? So this is big. Alright, so you will be sluggish in movement when you have this kind of feather. So alright, so if you are thinking like that, so you're wrong. So this feather is for sexual selection. So peacocks, this kind of feathers are only present in male peacock. So the more colorful the feather, the more sexual partner the peacock is. So meaning to say, even though the male will be eaten by a tiger, but the thing here is, if this peacock give its genes to its multiple mate, alright, so multiple mate, and it creates a multiple offspring, so it's not a problem if this peacock will be eaten by a tiger, because it's already done its job, which is to spread its genes to its mate. Alright, so that's the story of this peacock. Next one. Alright, so we have this gecko over here, which is perfectly camouflaged with its environment. Alright, next one. Now, there is this what they call, so when the organism adapt, they tend to mutate, their body tend to mutate, and their structures tend to change. When the structure tends to change, the thing there is, they become a new organism. They are not anymore similar to their ancestral organism. And that process is what they call adaptive radiation, from the word itself, radiation. So meaning to say, one organism, this organism is affected by the change in the environment, and therefore, this organism, if that is affected by the change in their environment, therefore they will create new organism out of that change. in their environment through mutation, through changes in structure, in which those structures are not anymore the same with their ancestral species. So, when they evolve, they become completely different from their ancestor. Alright, so if they evolve in different ways, something like this, so this one is different from their ancestral version. So if they evolve into something like this again, alright, so something like this again, this kind of structure is already different from these organisms, thus making from one organism it give rise to three kinds of organism. So we have 1, 2, 3 kinds of organism. That is because of the certain change in environment that triggers the mutation and changes in the structures of the organism to that area. So, yeah, they be able to open themselves into new environmental niches. Alright, so example of this is the Galapagos finches as Darwin observed. Alright, next one. Alright, so in that process of adaptive radiation, the process of creating new species, something like this one, is called the speciation. Alright, we called it speciation. So, the evolutionary process by which new biological species arise. So, in this case, we have one common ancestor. This ancestor over here give rise to different kinds of species. So, there you go. So, that is what they call speciation. Alright, so these organisms right here came from one common ancestor. And what's the reason? Changes in the environment. Alright, so that is speciation. Now, in this picture, so let's use one example here. We will use a bird. Alright, so we will use a bird, and then the bird originally came from this island, and then it flew to this island. So technically, bird A, alright, some birds are still on this island, and the bird A is now populated this island. So probably this happened in the so somehow million years ago, something like that. So that, alright, so the island itself has a new environment, so therefore the birds here tend to mutate, and then when they mutate, they change themselves, their structures, and so on and so forth. They be able to become a new species which is different from bird A. Alright, so the bird A before becomes a bird B, so which is different from the bird A, which is on the mainland. Now, the bird B migrated, they flew from this island to this island. Alright, so technically, it's still bird B. But the thing here, the island has new environment, so therefore, the bird B becomes bird C. So, bird C is different from bird B, and bird C is different from bird A. Alright, so there you go. So, the bird C migrated to another island. So technically, it's still a bird C. But the thing here is, after several years, that bird C migrated again back to the second island. Alright, so these two mated and reproduced bird D. Alright, so it reproduced bird D. Now, next one. So, the bird C before here, which is left after it migrated to the third island that we have, the fourth island that we have right here, it becomes bird D. Alright, so, the bird D here migrated here, and then the bird D migrated over here. So, yeah, that's the story of migration and then mating. So, when these two mates, it produces bird E, so on and so forth. So, how many species do we have right here? Due to environmental changes, due to the changes in the environment per island. So, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Alright, so, not only environmental changes, but mating. Alright, so, two new organisms mate with each other. As long they belong to the same family, they be able to produce a new variety of organism that we have right here. Alright, so that is organism E. Okay, so that's how speciation works. Right. Now, this is Galapagos finches. So these finches are belong to one family, but the thing here, they are of different species. So this yellow one over here is different from yellow one over there. In terms of scientific name, they are also different. So meaning to say that one organism, one finch over here, this is their ancestral finch. Yan. So this is their ancestral finch. It give rise to several or myriad of species of finches. So that's how adaptive radiation causes speciation. All right? So there you go. Next one. So the bear. Okay? Bear is an example of adaptive radiation, and because of different environmental habitat, they be able to develop new set of structures which is suited to that habitat. So therefore, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 kinds of bear. And as well, not only environment, but the food present on that particular environment. So each bear that we have right here have different food that they eat. So technically, bears are product of adaptive radiation. All right, next one. It came from one ancestor. These 8 bears that we have right here, it came from one common ancestor, and then they become like this. All right, next one. All right, cats. All right, so cats are very they are many, and they are distributed all throughout this planet. Yan. Again, this is a product of adaptive radiation. All right, next one. So, not only cats, but dogs as well. Alright, product of adaptive radiation. So, some of them are already mingled with, they already mingled in with humans, so they be able to some dogs are be able to be domesticated. That's why they become different from their ancestral dogs or their relative dogs. Alright, just like the wolf and then the common domesticated dog that we have right here. All right, so these are the dogs. All right. Okay, so with that, so we'll finish up the first part of our discussion regarding the mechanisms of evolution. So on the second part, we will going to discuss the genetic drift. So for now, that's all for today. So I hope you did learn something here.